Welcome to Talent Talks. I'm Lara Guevara, your host for today. There's been a lot of conversation lately about tariffs and the ripple effects they are creating for global trade. For DTC founders sourcing from Asia, specifically from China, the stakes are even higher. The decisions are tougher, and the smart supply chain strategies are more urgent than ever. But today's guest isn't just navigating that landscape; he's guiding other founders through it. I'm so stoked this early in the morning, 6 a.m. in the Philippines, to be on the other side of the mic, hosting instead of guesting, and getting to ask questions to the one of the best podcast hosts out there. Today's guest needs no introduction. I'm thrilled to be joined by Andrew Faris, someone many of you already follow for his sharp, thoughtful takes on e-commerce growth. He's the founder of AJF Growth, a consultancy helping DTC brands grow smart and sustainably. And now he's also building his own brand, where he's actually partnered with team members in Move and also more staffing. So let's dive in. Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Is it 6
We're
for you?
flipping.
I thought it was 7 for you. I thought I
It's
didn't.
it's because of the daylight. It's 6 for me right now.
I would have. You didn't have to do this. I could have done. We could have find a different time. I just didn't know. I thought it was 7. I thought I was being nice.
That's fine. I usually get up 5:30 anyway.
Yeah, I know.
But do some
You're a
other
mom.
stuff.
You
Yeah.
like you've already gone through small kids and stuff. So like you
Yes.
like it wouldn't have mattered to me either, to be honest with you, because 6 it's like whatever. I'm basically up anyway.
Yes.
So yeah.
We're flipping the script today. Usually you're the one hosting or interviewing, so I'm excited to have you on the pod. For those who
Thanks.
might not know you yet, though I doubt that's many, could you give us a quick intro? We're interested to know your responsibility as the founder of AJF Growth. So tell us more about it.
Yeah, I've been in D2C for about 10 years in e-commerce. I've been on basically every side of the businesses. So I started as a media buyer at Kalo, which is a brand. That was a wild ride, like 0 to 20 million in a year and a half with no funding. That was in like 2014, 2015, something like that. So it was like the brands just didn't get that big that fast at them those days. It was a really different world we lived in D2C. And from the brand side, from the media buyer side, yeah, that was really fun. Went from there to Common Thread Collective, where I became a growth strategist alongside Taylor Holiday, the founder. That was actually the first strategist at CTC besides Taylor, who had also been involved in significant ways at Kalo, and eventually became the VP of growth there. So was basically the head of strategy at CTC for a while, and then from there we spun off our own brands at 4x400, where I ended up being the CEO. We owned up to 6 brands at a time in our portfolio. That went back down to 1, which is still going, called Bamboo Earth. I stopped working at 4x400 in 2021. Learned mostly from failure there. I did a lot of things wrong in that world, and that's been an extremely helpful thing to reflect on in the past. And then sort of accidentally started freelancing. I wasn't sure what I was going to do after that. I was looking at going back in house with brands, going back to CTC, all kinds of things. Ended up with a few clients, and now here we are in 2025. Let's see, 3+ years into having my own boutique agency. So AJF Growth serves only 4 clients right now. There's little bits of calls and coaching things that will happen here and there besides that, but it's basically 4 full service clients, and we're a boutique agency. There's about 10 of us working on those 4 clients. So we go in pretty deep with them, with sort of financial forecasting, meta ads growth, that kind of stuff. So and now, yeah, like you said, I'm also spinning up my own brand on the side, which I haven't said too much about so far to people, but maybe today's the day.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Let's start with your AJF hat on, because you're in constant conversation with these DTC founders and with all this tariff talk lately. What are you hearing from the brands you work with, specifically with the owners?
So real of my small portfolio, only one of them manufactures in China, and they're actually probably one of the better positioned brands to, even if they just have to straight up eat it on tariffs, like even if they just have to pay it and move on, their economics are so favorable to them that with like raising the price a little and maybe even not doing that, they might be okay. They just have their COGS are just extremely good. So they can actually probably just be okay, at least on parts of their business. So we haven't totally freaked out for them yet. There's that. little bits of things happening all over the place, though. I think the two things that stand out to me in this analysis, aside from the baseline thing that nobody knows what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, because there's been so much tariff talk since President Trump was elected in the US, and yet it's actually very little of it has really come to fruition. Like, lots of stuff has gotten pushed back right at the last minute, and it seems clearly to be a negotiating tactic at times. And so the uncertainty is a big part of it for my brands. I think in some ways the bigger thing is a question about economic uncertainty on the consumer side, like just the sense of like, consumer confidence has reached 45-year lows and things like that. And so it feels like, are we going to hit some big recession where everybody's just going to put their dollars back in their pocket? Nobody's going to buy your stuff. And that could end up being the really big problem. So that's like a big part of it. And then the other thing I would say that you and I have talked about, Lara, is that, this is just an area of brands, businesses and their business operations that is really under optimized. They don't have resilient supply chains set up. And I think a lot of people are currently discovering that they actually really needed a whole lot of stuff to change in that. And if you want my sort of optimistic take on everything, that in the long run, this would be one of the ways it goes well, is that no matter what happens with the tariffs, brands sort of figure out that they need to really think a lot about their supply chain and get things dialed. So that it feels really uncertain. It really feels uncertain on all sides. But, you immediately see smart founders kind of finding information and resources. You and I recorded a podcast recently. I know I've gotten some good feedback on that already. Like, people saying it was really helpful to me to just think through what can I do next, So yeah.
Yeah. And that's a very good angle. I haven't really thought about like more of the consumer side. I have been thinking about the other and the other side, which is just tariff, Asian countries. But the way that you explained it, it's more than the tariff issue right now, but the uncertainty and the recession or what's going to happen without knowing so many things right now in the US. So, but do you have like coaches, or are you supporting other brands aside from the US, Andrew? And did you see any difference?
Like brands that are
in
not
Australia
US
or
based.
UK?
No, I'm not.
Yes,
I'm
that's
all
right.
my clients are in the US. That's a good point though, because I definitely have had plenty of friends in those kinds of places, and I imagine like that would be a really good time. They may have a real price advantage in the US taking the same product, and if they're set up to distribute here, they could be in pretty good shape. Although I don't really know. I haven't thought at all about how the tariffs and just how all of that stuff would play out. I'm not sure.
Just recently, we've onboarded two UK clients
Interesting.
from your podcast. So, yes, two UK client for your podcast and one Australian. So we've been somehow affected as well in our agency, because our supply chain agency is supporting directly. Majority is US clients from Southeast Asian vendors, but again, what we've seen is that there are no what we've observed, no pause, no pivot for other countries except for the US right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear that. It's interesting to hear that brands from those places in this moment would go to you guys, and do that. Like, it feels like the time when a US based business would really want to go work with you. And this is like, it's one of the things I've basically told people is like, I don't know, go work with Lara. Like, you know how to handle this thing better than anybody I know. So it's like, it's interesting to hear other people. I wonder if they're just kind of scared into it. Like, oh gosh, if everybody else needs to do this, I really need to do it, like just because like you might even have a big advantage by getting this kind of thing dialed in if you're somewhere else. And I don't know, maybe it's helpful if you're in Australia, the time zone thing with you guys would be easier and some of that stuff. But yeah.
Connected to that, it's very understandable that some founders are in panic mode. Every week there's new news about this and what are the better alternatives. They are unaware yet. So what do you think make a solid resilience plan, and not just talking about supply chain, but overall e-commerce?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the thing. Like, hard moments like this, what they do is they highlight really quickly who is set up for success and who's not, and they highlight all of the things that you are already doing right and wrong in your business. what I've seen a lot of people do, right, is they respond by like cutting a bunch of overhead. This is like a common thing when something's going wrong in your business, whether it's tariffs or something else. And I did an interview recently with this guy, Ben Perkins. I've talked about the story a couple of times. It wasn't because of tariffs; it was because of interest from bad debt. But he had to like really meaningfully downsize. And one of the things he discovered in that process was that he really didn't lose any productivity in his business. The people he lost, and he says it might have been because he was setting them up poorly. It's not because he was saying they were necessarily bad employees. There's all kinds of reasons this happens, but it's just really hard to build a good system in your business. And so when you have a moment like this where you cut down, it actually highlights all of these other elements of the business that end up being that were under optimized along the way. It turns out you had all kinds of software you didn't need. It turns out you had all kinds of people you didn't need, and all this sort of stuff. And so the brands that I think are going to do really well here are the brands that are already sort of machines of efficiency in the way they're thinking. And I look at that and say there's like a few elements of that. The first is, first of all, they should actually be attacking their supply chain no matter what happens to the tariffs. This is something I come back to all the time, but like, no matter what happens to tariffs, if you have lower COGS, if you have better terms, if you have, lower MOQs, if you have better cash management and all that, then everything is easier. Everything is easier, right? So like this brand I was describing earlier that is going to get hit by tariffs, but it's not going to be too bad for them, even if they have to just eat it, or they can at least, it won't be great, but they could sustain it because they already had really, really low price, like really low COGS. They'd already done a bunch of price testing on their products. They've already done a bunch of these things that they can do to determine kind of where their business is at. And so because of that, they're better suited to like deal with a moment like this. And so I look at that and say, like, that's like kind of the starting point is you have that sort of thing figured out and you should feel really good. The second thing, like low OPEX as a percentage of revenue. I think people sometimes hear the idea that you should have a low OPEX, by which I mean primarily people and software in e-commerce. Those are the two biggest OPEX charges. Usually sometimes rent is in there too. People sometimes hear that as like, I hate hiring people or something like that. It's not that at all. It's just that D2C, part of the thing that makes the model work as an industry is that you can run it really, really lean. It scales really, really well against people. And so if you have your business, if that's true of D2C businesses, then you ought to be building your business that way no matter what. And if you are, then you already should have a leaner, a more efficient team, a leaner OPEX in a way that that makes it so that like there's like leftover margin for something like this. Like one way to think about this is if your OPEX as a percentage of your revenue is 10% or less, that means 90% of your revenue left over is available to pay for the cost of delivery of your product, right? So that's COGS and shipping to the customer and a couple other little things, but those are the two main ones. And then your ads, your CAC, right? Well, if you have 90% of your revenue left over to pay for those two things, you can actually take a pretty big COGS hit. And yes, you're going to have to slow your growth down. That's true. Or while you sort out your supply chain, or whatever. But you could probably spend less on ads at a higher return on ad spend and still be profitable and growing. And that's because you've done this other thing over here that's really good. If you take that 10% and make it 8 because you're also hiring great people in the Philippines to staff your business or something like that, like now you're really somewhere, or you're like aggressively using AI so that you can run even leaner. There are real ways to get around there. And then if you add this CAC element of it, which is the other thing I'd say, which is like really being serious about using your ads to drive profit and not just to drive growth, and getting really serious about cutting out wasted ad dollars wherever you can. You sort of run your business with those three things all efficiently, right? So supply chain, OPEX, and CAC all efficiently. I actually think, as hard as this moment is for a lot of businesses, you can sustain this. Not for every business. I don't want to make this sound too easy and too rosy. There's just some businesses that are really going to be in trouble here, and I understand that if this lasts, right? But at the baseline, if you're running a highly efficient business, while it's true you may have to slow down your growth or something like that, it's easier to imagine this looking like a blip and like a difficult moment when you in 3 years when you look back on this day, than like the thing that kills your business. If you can do those things well, you can survive it.
This is a very good key takeaway, even for me, Andrew, in the sense that there are three buckets that they should be focusing on, and what I hear is that we, the owners, should be able to understand where are each of those buckets are what's the situation? What's the Opex? Is it 10% or less? If not, then definitely that's something that they can work on right away if they're higher than that. And then there's the supply chain, which we know is under optimized for many brands. And then lastly, the say CAC element, wherein it's directly related to paid ads. So those three, I believe, are there are so many like references that they can work on, especially in the media buying. I hope there are many help that they can get. The Opex probably would be the for me the not the hardest, but like it's time consuming to understand where what to replace, what to get as a hiring, because a lot of DTC founders I know, and actually our clients are, they do not want to be involved in the hiring process, and if they're replacing talents or if they're making it leaner, it's one of the biggest challenges. So, and then
It's
again, the
funny.
supply chain. So
I sort of think it's the opposite. I think, I mean, you have an interesting perspective. You're probably dealing with way more DTC founders directly than I am. So, like, I believe you when you say that. I think that the thing about CAC is that it requires, like, if you're going to do it with a meta ads focus, there's all of these tricky questions around attribution and just like all this stuff that just like, getting good at using manual bids in an ad account, getting rid of your creative testing campaigns, the things that I talk about a lot when I talk about meta ads, they are hard to do if you haven't done them before. They require some help. It's really easy to like believe them in theory, but mess up the execution. And so I think those are tricky. With Opex, what I think is that there's a fairly clear playbook for what you ought to do. And this, I mean, you're right. It's not easy, especially if you're bigger, if your organization has more heads and some of those things. I think the playbook is start building more aggressively with AI to make it easier for people to be more productive. That's number one. Number two, and that's probably the hardest, by the way. That's hard to integrate, I think. Number two, start to look at where you can cut and realize that you can always make an argument to keep people. And it's just, you have to at some point be willing to do something that may not work, and it may be overcutting at some point. It's going to be tough, but like do that. But then number three, and this is the thing that I think is still underutilized, is for people to get really serious about looking in the Philippines. I just think like, and frankly, it's not even in the Philippines. Like there's other offshore places where people can find great talent as well. I say the Philippines because I have this advantage of having this relationship with you, Lara, and with the people in your ecosystem, in your orbit. So that's just like easily the place that I would look, right? And then where in fact my team is staffed. But it's just so clear to me that there's a real advantage by working with people who are talented there, because your dollars just go so much farther in hiring more senior people in roles.
yes,
And it really can be something where everybody, I think, can really win. And so, so that I think there's like there's this playbook that's there for Opex that seems clear to me. And cutting software costs, some of those things too, like start getting aggressive about it. Like I'm just about to take on a new sponsor on my podcast. It's going to like, one of their core claims is like, hey, we can save you 30% on a piece of software that a lot of people are still using. And we work as good or better than that piece of software. Like you need to get on that right now. Go do it. Like, it's just like, and there's like a lot of that stuff out there. There's a real arms race in software that is good for brands, because they can benefit from the competition around price, some of those things, so hard to beat Klaviyo and Shopify, but like pretty much everything else, there's some way to shop it and check into it,
So here's what I observed with the hiring of media buyers in more staffing, and I'm sharing this because you're about CAC. They've been hiring media buyers more aggressively now than ever. More than, especially when we started partnering with you. What they will do is they will be trying to learn your strategy, and then hiring a media buyer, and then they also ask that media buyer to watch your podcast and your strategy, and then they will execute together. So what I felt there is that they have a playbook that they're following, because you're there, and probably other in the market as well. But that's the confidence that I felt when they're hiring media buyers. That's why I share that it could probably be easier for them to navigate that part than supply chain. But similar to you, Andrew, what I would say, not similar, actually the opposite of what you have said. For me, being someone very immersed in supply chain, I keep saying that it's the easiest among the three. Hiring versus supply chain is the easiest because it's the most under optimized, and that's the biggest chunk of savings you can get right away. But I think for clients that we've been teaching how to do it or consultation, they would really prefer to work on the marketing side because majority they are interested there and that's their background and experience, and they don't want to touch supply chain.
Yes. I think that's really right. And I think what you said there is the reason why supply chains are so bad. Everybody started their business because they're marketers who saw an opportunity, or they're product people who love the product, right? So when I think about my business that I'm starting, my brand, it's because I'm a marketer evaluating it at a financial level, and there's some things that I'm interested in brand wise there. But I mean, Lara, you talked to me when I started building my supply chain. I literally knew nothing about where to begin even looking. But see, the thing I also knew is that I had you. And so I thought, like, okay, you are brilliant and affordable and relative to the scope of the work. And also I knew that I wouldn't need you forever. I also have a business partner who's got supply chain background and who understands some of those side of things. I tried to support my lack of knowledge with other people, one of whom has actual sort of supply chain experience, operational experience in e-commerce businesses, worked with me way back at Kalo on that side, and then could also support him. You know, he could support with you because it's a side gig for both of us, so we don't have time to go do it all. So like, yeah. So, and knew we could come out in a really good spot. So it's funny you say that. Like, I think you're right. That's a lot of it, but it is the reason why I'm so confident sending people to you, because I just know the conversations I've had with you versus the conversations about supply chain I've had with founders, and they're just in different universes in terms of the depth of knowledge.
Thank you for sharing that. Connecting to your brand, you can share whatever you're comfortable to share. Tell us about what you're developing, or like how did you start, like as a marketer or as a product lover who wanted to build this brand?
Let me think about what I can share here. I could give you the scoop. I don't mind. I don't mind sharing it. I think it's fine. So, okay, this is
the headline, the title of this this podcast.
Not that anybody's really going to care, but it can be a good way for me to promote this episode with you. So the brand is let's see, can I say the name? I think I can say the name. The brand is going to be called Resolute, and the brand is going to be in the cologne space for men. So that's what I'll say about it for now. There's some more details of it that make it a little bit different than the way I just framed it, but that's what I'll say up front. Okay. So it's in the cologne space for men. And so, I looked at this, as an opportunity in a couple ways. One of them is that the brand, there'll be some messaging and things like that. I don't particularly care about cologne. Actually, that's not the interesting thing to me. Although I think there's a cool category within this that I'm going to play with. But and in fact, neither is my co-founder. But I looked at a couple things here. One of them is, and I will, by the way, at some point sort of show all the details of this on my podcast when I'm ready. My plan is to do a podcast episode where I basically take people through my P&L once like all of the elements of it are sort of locked in. And at least what the model and what the plan is going to be, and then try to build in public as much as possible. So the reason I was interested in it was sort of first economic. I think there's a way to build. I became really convinced at some point that margin is a cheat code in D2C, and that if you can find a way to get a product from a manufacturer to the customer at a very low cost as a percentage of revenue, it becomes an outsized advantage in the business. I've worked on businesses that had very poor margins, and you just can never get out from under it. And I've worked on with better businesses with great margins, and it's just like, it just solves so many mistakes that you make along the way. You just can make a lot more mistakes when you have worse margins. So there's a really specific thing with cologne that I think, and again, the way that we're going to approach it, which I'll hold back a little. There's some differences that make it a little different than traditional cologne. But that I think make it a really appealing e-commerce product at a margin level, including that the like product itself is very low cost relative to what you can charge for it. But if anybody knows anything about cologne, even in the subcategory I'm going to be in, one thing you may know is that cologne packaging is often sort of ornate and interesting, and so that's actually where a lot of our cost is going to come in, is in the packaging. Yeah. And so the appeal to me was to do that and to pursue. And so we put a lot of time and effort into getting packaging that we're really excited about. And then, there are some elements of what the brand will message and the way that it will talk about cologne and men, frankly, that are interesting to me in terms of messaging and brand and some of that stuff. So I'm excited about that too. And so it's a little passion project. To be honest with you, one of the things I'm excited about it with too is that I do a lot of podcasts and content, but I often can't show ad accounts or ads. But if I have my own brand, I can. So that's like a sort of added bonus to me, is like it'll just be a lot easier for me to. People will sometimes say to me, like, it's nice that you're telling us all this stuff, but you need to show me examples. And I'll be like, there's only so many things I can show you from my clients before it like breaks confidentiality. Yeah. So that's definitely one of the goals, is to build something that I can share pretty publicly. So yeah, that's what it is. I don't know. Did I answer the question?
Yes, definitely.
Great.
And I know that we love working with Greg, your partner. We know that he's also had the supply chain experience. But what was the trigger, or how did you and your partner decided that you will bring in supply chain partners as well? Or would you do that even without knowing us? Would you know that you can bring in remote?
I'll put it differently. I actually don't know if I would have started the business without knowing you guys. For me, this is something that's kept me from starting a brand for a long time, is that the idea of going and sourcing manufacturers and stuff like that, it just would have been a huge mental load relative to what I had time for while trying to serve my clients well. And I should say, like, I don't think Greg or I views this as like a huge brand. We just don't think this is going to be a 9-figure business that we're going to put it's just not the way we're imagining the place that it holds in our lives. So I wasn't willing to put that kind of effort into it either, like to go like that crazy on it. But I looked at it and Greg looked at it, and we said, like, we both have other full-time jobs that we're working on. We need somebody we trust to help us find. We know what we're trying to do here. We know where some comparable products are. We had ordered those, looked at them, and we needed to show those to somebody to do that. And, Lara, you were at my house one time. I remember, like, I was just kicking this idea around. I hadn't gone and filed an LLC yet or done anything like that. But I remember I showed you a comparable product, and because I was trying to gather, like, is this going to be difficult to manufacture, And actually that was a really helpful thing to me to talk with you, because you were like, no, this is not a difficult thing to manufacture. You were like right away, you and you were with Glyza at the time, another friend, both of you had the same reaction, which was like, you grabbed the comp that I had looked at, and you were like, oh, we can definitely make this. Here's the, no problem, And so your confidence gave me confidence to do that. And then the reason that that was a big trigger for me of what was like, okay, we can actually do this, because Lara feels confident in doing it, and then, now you didn't see what the crazy stuff we're going to do with the packaging and how that was going to be an annoying thing to manufacture, but that hasn't been crazy or anything. The reason that we chose you ultimately is basically because I knew for sure that you had deep expertise in this area, that you'd be helping me, and not just you, right? Like, I knew that I wasn't going to get you full time. Like, you're too senior for that, right? But like, I knew I'd get you on a call here and there, and that your team members, I trusted you to bring team members, and that's been completely true. Again, like I met. I've hung out in person with team members from the Philippines who've worked on this, like great people. And all along the way, they have really displayed like deep knowledge of the category, deep knowledge of what we're trying to accomplish, kind of split it into two parts, right? Somebody's working on packaging sourcing, somebody else is working on the product sourcing, people with two different sets of knowledge. And it's really, really been great. In fact, recently we were like, okay, we're ready to kind of like end this engagement to get things set up. And then we came back to you and we're like, actually, we need more help. And we're really happy to pay to have kind of ongoing engagement in this respect. So so it was a really easy decision in that respect, because we knew that was going to happen. And it was so confirmed to me. I've used this stat a lot of times. times. It was so confirmed to me, like when after our first meeting, like a week later, you guys got on a call and we're like, okay, we pre-sourced 60 manufacturers, reached out to 45 of them. And it was like, what? It's been a week. How is that even possible? And yeah, it was like, yeah. So, sorry, one last thing about this. Greg and I are also like, I think both feel the same way, which is part of my goal with this is to build, and the way I'm thinking about AJF growth in general, essentially the little phrase I have in my mind is Philippines first. Like, so we're just thinking Philippines first about who will join our team. My experience working with you, I mean, you've just become like a very good friend in the space, and somebody I trust a lot on all these things. You know, my experience working with you, with all the other executives in the companies that are surrounded by you, as well as my, all the way down through sort of intro level team members on my teams, has been nothing but exceptional. And so it just has confirmed to me, like the way I framed it recently is that every time I expect more out of my Filipino teammates, they meet it, and then I realize I didn't expect enough still, not in terms of like work ethic, but I just mean in terms of like how high of a quality of work I could expect from them. So it was very core to the whole pursuit is having you and your team work on it.
That's a very good point, and I'd like to discuss that further, because what I've seen worked with a lot of our clients who has been capitalizing and maximizing Filipino talents is the mentoring part. And it's like duplicating yourself to your team members. And if you're doing it, Andrew, with your team members, you're like creating little Andrews from the Philippines. And that could be like something that can fuel the growth, even with you doing other stuff, or like these businesses that you have. And yes, the clients that I've seen it work are those who are really dedicating time for learning, for teaching, and at the same time, the talent that we hire for them should have that growth, the grit for learning, so they can really capture the work easily and fast. Probably 3 years ago, we don't have media buyers in the space. We don't have a course for that. They learned it from their experience and from their mentors. So by doing trainings online, watching videos. So again, it's like hire someone smart, willing to learn, and then duplicate yourself with trainings and mentorings. That could be that could go a long
and it probably depends what level you're hiring too, right? Like at my lower levels, that's definitely been true. At like the executive levels, when I'm working with people who are coming in with like a little bit more of a polished resume and stuff, right? Like they're teaching me stuff a lot of times. Like it's like, so, I'm again, one of your teammates, I'm going to see tomorrow. And she's just like, the way I would just describe her is like, she's just a grown up, like, it's just like sometimes when you, and I don't mean that she's old. I just mean she presents with professionalism. You know what I mean? Like there's people you get around at work who are younger in their careers, and they're the kind of people you described a second ago, which is like the most important quality is hungry, willing to learn, right? That's great. And I like those people bring energy to my team. A lot of them are willing to do. I have a whole bunch of team members like that. Like I can think of giggle fests I had with them when I was in the Philippines with you, right? And they present really high quality work. Right? They do a great job. I love them. They're awesome. But then there's other team members who come in and they just bring some like, I don't know if this word translates, or if you know what gravitas. Do you have you heard the word gravitas?
No,
it's a Latin word. So it just means like I don't even know that native English speakers all know this word. I mean, I guess you're a native English speaker, but anyway, gravitas. It's like you take them seriously when they speak. You just feel right away.
Oh yes.
Like gravity. Like there's like weight to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, that's the way I would say is like when I've involved people on my team who have, and this is just generally true for almost anywhere you hire, right? They have more experience, deeper resumes. They come and they present with that kind of thing, even if, even if no matter the personality type. And that's something the way I would say like some of these team members are. They come in and they just bring with them this wealth of experience and knowledge and essentially trustworthiness, so that there's things that are on my brain. And this is what Greg Carey talks about a lot, was that like essentially as he started hiring you and other people like that in his e-commerce business, D2C, right? He talks about the idea like it just created a mental release. Suddenly this load of things that was on his mind, he could just like trust, Lara's got it, like, whatever. And that I have a lot of things like that in my experience with this. And again, that is another thing that makes me realize I've got to involve them in more places when I need to. So yeah, it's definitely both. Younger team members, you're bringing it at a lower level. And I have found my Filipino team members are really hungry to learn whether it's when I was with you guys in the Philippines or not, like they're soaking up stuff that I'm talking about. They're repeating it back to me and all that stuff. That's pretty normal. If you're, I'm 41, I've been in the game for 10 years. Like those team members, they're going to see my experience, try to learn from it. And my Filipino talent has been like, definitely great about that.
Thank you for sharing. Now to wrap up, our interview, you've been on both sides helping brands grow, and now you're on the road to growing your own. What's the biggest learning or reflection you've had so far and you think our listeners will benefit from? Aside from the tons of things that you've shared earlier, maybe there's more.
Yeah. I think what I would say is there's sort of endless optimization to be done in businesses. There's sometimes a mentality that I see. There's sort of two sides of it. One side I see is people who go like, why would I need to do this thing over here? Everything is already going great. And my answer to that is sort of like, it's like telling me, yeah, you got a 92% on a test. And yeah, you did great. 92% is a great score. But there's still 8% you could get better, and it would be a better performance. And that analogy actually breaks down pretty fast. But like, yeah, just because you're doing some things really well doesn't mean you're doing everything really well. And the reason that matters is that I actually really believe D2C is a great business model. I believe e-commerce businesses can be really good, really profitable businesses. Cash is probably a challenge in a lot of them no matter what, but like they can run really profitably and you can make life-changing money in these kinds of businesses, whether you're in the Philippines or in the US. And so I think by continuing to look at things like your supply chain, like your Opex, like your CAC, and have a mentality of focus on the core drivers of the P&L, create that kind of value on the bottom line of your business. You look at those three areas of costs and get really serious about how to optimize them. You can end up just like really building a really, really, really profitable, really good business. And you just have to sort of be relentless about that. And if you can do that really well, you can be effective. So that's the first thing I'd say is like, dig into all of these different elements, see just how like good of a team you can run with a lean Opex and outsourced talent and all those things. How low can you make your COGS? And what happens if you keep shopping the manufacturer while maintaining a really high quality product, or how much more efficiency can you build into that process? Like there's just a lot of that kind of stuff that you can sort of always be optimizing. And then on the other side, if you're a younger business trying to grow, you hear this, it feels like overwhelming or something like that. My advice is just try to focus on what, as far as you can tell, is the biggest lever next, and that's where it's like having some heuristics is really helpful. Like if you have, more than before tariffs, if you're paying more than, let's say 50%, if more than 50% of your money is going out the door in cost of goods and cost of delivery and things like that, like you're in real trouble. You need to rethink the business before you go much further, unless that was your strategy, or in the first place, right? That there's some way in which, but if that was not purposeful and strategic, then you probably are in real trouble. Like, and so like, how do you go do that? Do you change what you do? Do you reorganize everything? Whatever. Like, if you're an earlier stage and you're hearing this stuff about meta ads, like go chase down the knowledge that you need. I got a lot of podcasts that you can go listen to for free. Go join Admission from Common Thread Collective and drink it like a fire, like it's from a fire, or take the fire hose of content and drink as much of it as you can. Like that's the mentality I have about it. Is like, is there with some time and some reps, the knowledge that is available to people at this point in the game is so much different than when I started 10 years ago. There's so much more of it that, like, if you actually will commit yourself to that, you can build an insanely good business, whether that's a software business in our space because you understand people's needs, an agency business like I have, or D2C business. There's a lot of opportunity. And, you know, I know it's an uncertain moment, but I'm just really bullish on the whole thing. There's ways to operate excellently and build something awesome.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That's super great to hear from you. And thank you so much for sharing your time and perspective. It's always refreshing to hear from someone who's in the trenches and also in the strategy room. For those who haven't followed Andrew yet, he's in X at Andrew J. Faris, and also the podcast is the Andrew Faris podcast, which I will share in the show notes as well. And for founders interested in tapping fractional supply chain, visit us at movesupplychain.com. And the founders looking to grow lean and fast with offshore talent, it's morestaffing.co. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Thanks, Lara.